What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back on the video. Today we're taking a look at running backs, talking about the players I think the industry is either too high or too low on right now. And we'll start things off with a player I think they're too high on, and that's Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams has an ECR of running back 27, ADP running back 31, my running back 36 right now. Now, I really liked Williams coming out of college. I do think he's a very talented running back. We just kind of haven't seen him put it all together yet. It could certainly happen. It just hasn't happened yet. Even last season, he had 264 touches, a really, really strong number, was still only 34th in half PPR points per game. And for as much as there's that narrative of, Sean Payton running backs, we'll talk about that later in this video. I mean, he was the coach last year, right? And he was still 34th in points per game despite a billion touches. This season, they drafted Audric. It's either Estime or Estime. Can someone tell me exactly how you pronounce that one? But we're going to say Estime in this one. But Audric Estime signed undrafted free agent Blake Watson. I think that's to replace Pirine. So Samaje Perine, getting up there in age, wasn't horrible last season, but wasn't amazing either. I think Blake Watson is going to take at least some of that role. I don't think Pirine will be on the team this season. Early beat reports have indicated that Williams is still likely to be the 1A. I think that will be the case. I think he will be the lead back on this team, but the Estime will be like that 1B, mainly on the ground. Estime is not a very good pass catching back, so most of his work will come through carries, but it'll be more like 1A for Williams, 1B for Estime, and then you'll have McLaughlin competing with Blake Watson, basically for the work, like the combined work that Pirine and McLaughlin had last season. So that's a pretty strong role, but it'll be mostly pass catching, right? Pirine was pretty much only a pass catcher last season. McLaughlin did a decent amount of work in the receiving game. Those two would kind of split all those like 2-minute, all the third down role, obvious passing down, like all those kind of situations. That's what those two would split. Now, I do think this can be a very productive backfield because, again, like I said before, Sean Payton backfields have a very long history of having highly productive running backs. The problem is, I think they're going to be productive as a whole. I truly don't think Sean Payton, is in love with Javonte Williams. He is not a prospect that Sean Payton specifically went after. Payton went after Blake Watson. Payton went after Audric Estime. He didn't go after Javonte Williams. Had Payton hand selected Williams, we'd have a little bit more confidence in that. He kind of inherited Williams from the old regime. They also didn't lose anyone for agency. Again, I think they're going to get rid of Pirine, but they didn't lose anyone, and they went after two running backs that have like specific roles, and those are kind of the scariest ones in fantasy. Running backs that it's like, okay, you're really good on early downs at the goal line, you're really good in the receiving game. It's like if they can kind of rotate those two onto the field with McLaughlin, with Javonte Williams, I mean, are we going to be staring at a 4 running back committee? Probably not, right? We're probably still looking at a 3-back committee with people competing for roles. But if they felt really good about Williams, and they felt really good about upping the touches to like 275, 280 this season, why'd they draft Estime? Why'd they bring in Blake Watson? Again, I don't think it's only to replace Pirine for both of those two. I think we're looking at a 3 running back committee, in which case you can't really draft Williams as the top 30 running back. I think people are going to start to realize that, and he's going to dip closer to where I have him ranked, running back 36, 37. At that point, that's near the cutoff of when we start getting into more handcuffs. And if, Javonte Williams drops to like 35, 36, 37, 38, I'm going to start taking him a little bit more. It's just that right now he kind of goes at the end of like the really good wide receivers. And I personally cannot justify passing on the tail end of the really rock solid wide receivers to take Javonte Williams in a 3 running back committee. So I would just go wide receiver at that point. A running back that I have been drafting a decent amount of, though, basically instead of Williams at a similar-ish spot, but a little bit later, is Devin Singletary, ECR 32, ADP running back 32, my running back 29. Now, his only competition right now is Tyron Tracy Jr., who we'll get to in a second. Eric Gray, who's just a complete and utter bust. And then Gary Brightwell, who's just a guy, probably less than just a guy. only the Packers and the Cowboys have more available running back opportunities than the Giants. They are missing 375 running back opportunities from last season after Saquon and Breida are gone. 375 is insane. And they only have Singletary as a proven NFL running back. He is not going to get 375, probably not going to get 300. If he did get 300, he's obviously crushing this ADP. But like, again, and proven NFL running backs, they need to fill 375 touches. They really only have Singletary. Now, I do like Tyrone Tracy Jr. as a talent. I do think he's going to have a role, especially in the receiving game, but that's a lot of touches to fill, right? He can have a role, and there can still be plenty for Singletary. For those of you who don't know Tyrone Tracy Jr., he played 6 years of college football. He was actually a wide receiver for the first 4, flips on over to running back for the final 2, although, it wasn't until that 6th season, the second year as a running back, where he had more than 113 carries. Like, he's very raw, right? He is not got many carries under his belt in college, not got many touches in any season of college. So there's nothing right now that can indicate that he's going to go out there and get 200 touches. Like, that's just not going to happen. I think we should expect him to be like a change of pace back, someone they bring in for 5 to 7 carries every week, maybe a little bit less than that, but utilize more on specific plays, scheming him targets, scheming him quick passes, screen passes, just getting the ball into his hands in space, but then also shifting on over and just getting him a few carries as well. He's not going to be a ground and pound running back. He's not their goal line back. And I don't think he's going to be out there for like every single third down. Because again, he's still a little bit raw as a running back. So unless they add someone, which is still possible, we're still like early in the offseason where they could go after a running back in free agency, they go after someone who gets cut. Unless that happens, we are staring at Singletary as an epic value around the running back 30. He's in line for so many touches on an offense that should be better than last season, upgrading wide receiver, getting Daniel Jones back. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of upside here, and I don't think people fully realize that. Another great value is Jonathon Brooks, especially when looking at ECR. ECR running back 38. That's crazy. We're about to talk about a dust running back in a second who goes earlier than that by ECR. That makes no sense. But ECR running back 38, ADP 24, my running back ranking 24 as well. I really don't understand the industry ranking on this one. It's way too low. Sure, he might not be 100% in week 1, but early season production is the least important in fantasy. Those games still matter. I understand the crowd that's like, those wins matter, right? You can't start off 0-3. But if you ever had to replace Brooks, it would be the first 2 weeks of the season, right? You don't have any buys for the first couple of weeks. You hopefully don't have any or have very few injuries, right? We haven't gotten to the midpoint of the season where half the running backs are injured. If you ever had to replace him, you have options over that first month. And it's not like you drafted him in round 3. If you drafted a running back in round 3 and they're going to miss time or start the season slow, that hurts you a lot more. When you're drafting him, ECR 38, he's your 3rd or 4th running back. You weren't drafting a running back in that range anyways. We started even at, Underdog ADP or my ranking at 24. That is still probably, unless you want RB0, your second running back. You can fill that in, right? You can add a late option in there, or not even specifically late. It could just still be a mid-round running back. You could fill something in there for the first couple of weeks. You can stream something. Like, you can figure it out, right? And then you think, okay, everyone is assuming he's going to start the season slow. But what if he doesn't? What if he's just like good to go to start the season? Like, it feels like a situation where 100% of people are assuming he's not going to be good to go for a good chunk of the early part of the season, that, he's going to start the season either like not playing or getting like 5 touches a game, that it's going to be like a month or 2 before we can really use him. That might not be the case. Like, he is currently expected to be ready in training camp. So if anything, maybe he's not featured in week 1, but he might be by week 4, which is Not something you can say about any of the running backs being drafted around him. I also don't think people realize how productive this backfield is going to be because everyone kind of still assumes that, it's Carolina, right? They were so bad last season. They're going to be bad again this season, that Bryce Young is just awful. He's never going to be good. Maybe, but also Bryce Young's probably going to be better than he was last season. The main thing here is, though, they are going to run the ball a ton. Every single time their head coach talks about football, he's like, yep, you guys will be surprised at how much we run it. We got to run it. We got to establish the run to set up play action. Whether you agree with that philosophy or not is a different discussion. They're objectively going to run it a ton. He is their best running back, so he will be getting the most touches. And they talked about how much they want to utilize running back, not only on the ground, but in the receiving game. They want to throw to their running backs a ton as well. Again, Brooks is their best running back by a mile. I think he's going to be easily a top 15 running back over the second half of the season where it matters the most, while also paying off his ADP in the first half of the season. If you can lock that up, in running back 3 range, that is an absolute no-brainer. Back to running backs, though, that make no sense to me. Zeke, running back 36 by ECR. So again, ahead of Brooks by ECR. Running back 40 on Underdog, my running back 44. I could see that dropping even more if we get any sort of news that Rico Dowdle is in a split, is leading that split, which I think is going to happen. I still have Dowdle ahead right now, but if we can get news, music to my ears, if we can get 60-40 split news, we can just skyrocket Rico Dowdle. But I'm through 22 drafts right now. I'm actually on the clock, or in slow drafts, in another 30. Okay, so we've got over 50 drafts of examples right now. Basically no one that I have 0% exposure to. You do 50 drafts, you're gonna get exposure to everyone, not Zeke. I have 0% exposure to Ezekiel Elliott. He has seen his rushing yards per game drop in every season of his career. 3.8 yards per carry 2 seasons ago, 3.5 last year. He's now eclipsed 2,500 career touches. The cliff came 2 years ago, right? He is ready to retire. He is complete dust. I mean, it's impressive he's still able to play right now. Most people could not make it onto the field. So that is impressive. But he's been objectively bad for years. And I just simply don't believe he's going to be fantasy relevant this season. The Patriots gave him a ton of touches last season because Stevenson got hurt. Stevenson could have returned, towards the end of the season, but they were tanking, right? They didn't have good players. They wanted an early pick. No reason to bring Stevenson back. And they're tanking, right? What helps you tank more than giving Zeke 184 meaningless carries? And speaking of carries, last 2 seasons, on 231 carries 2 years ago, Zeke's longest run was 27 yards. Last season, on 184 carries, his longest run was 17 yards. There is no other way of saying this other than he is cooked. Please do not draft him as a running back 36. Final running back go today is Chuba Hubbard, running back 42 by ECR, 54 by Underdog ADP, my running back 52. And this really just comes down to my take on Brooks. I think Brooks is just clearly their best running back, clearly in the second half of the season going to be used more. And I just don't see a lot of reasons to draft Chuba Hubbard because he was okay last season, not efficient, but in fantasy he was okay. It's just because he had a ton of touches, which is not going to be the case this season. Brooks is a significantly better running back. And, the main argument basically for taking Chuba is, early in the season, right? If Brooks takes a month to get to 80% and 2 months to get to 100%, then you could have a little bit of value there with him exceeding ADP. But who really cares, right? Where you're drafting Chuba, if you went hero RB even, you're not starting him, right? Who cares if he gets a couple more touches each week? You're not starting Chuba Hubbard over the first month of the season unless basically you went 0 RB. So if you go 0 RB, you grab Chuba as your second running back, and you drafted a ton of wide receivers, elite quarterback, and elite tight end, and you're like, I want to draft Chuba to get me a few extra points at running back too early in the season, and then when we get Brooks back, I can kind of figure out running back 2 after that. That is the only case, but that is one scenario and should not be driving his running back 42 ranking by ECR. So I think the community is just like a little bit over projecting how much, how many touches really he's going to get in the beginning of the season. I simply don't think it's going to happen for very long. Brooks is going to be the guy pretty early in the year, and then you're going to have Chuba as just a straight up handcuff, and that's not something you want as a running back 42. I'll close by talking about some running backs that just missed the cut. So I was going through a lot of running backs for this video. I had other options where we could have talked about. So here's some running backs that just missed the cut. We'll, of course, go over them plenty of times this summer. A few that I am higher on than ECR. Ken Walker, James Cook, and Jaylen Warren. I could have easily talked about any of those 3 as players that I think are great picks compared to ECR and ADP. A few that I don't like, I'm lower on than ECR, is Rachaad White, Tony Pollard, and Brian Robinson Jr. So if you watched this far, be sure to hit the like button, and you might as well hit the subscribe button as well while you're down there. If you want to see my full rankings along with trade calculators, a bunch of other premium content, then you can see that at my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That, my friends, is the end of this one, and thanks for watching.